The summer heat shimmered off the concrete as 8-year-old Luna Martinez carefully positioned her small plastic guitar against the weathered bench in Washington Square Park. Her father's old baseball cap sat crooked on her head, casting shadows over determined brown eyes that sparkled with the kind of fearless ambition only children possess. The tiny amplifier, barely larger than a lunchbox, hummed to life as she plugged in her toy instrument, a bright pink electric guitar she'd received for her birthday 3 months ago. Luna had been coming to this spot every Saturday for weeks now, practicing the songs she'd learned from YouTube videos on her mother's cracked phone screen. Today felt different somehow, electric with possibility. She'd finally mastered the opening riff to Iron Man, and her small fingers moved with surprising precision across the plastic strings. The sound that emerged wasn't perfect. How could it be from a toy? But it carried something more valuable than technical accuracy. It carried heart. As she began to play, a few passers-by slowed their steps. A jogger paused to stretch nearby, clearly lingering to listen. An elderly woman feeding pigeons smiled warmly in her direction. Luna's confidence grew with each note, a tiny frame swaying with the rhythm as she lost herself in the music. She didn't notice the growing crowd, didn't see the phones being raised to record, didn't realize that her pure joy was infectious enough to stop busy New Yorkers in their tracks. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd be grateful if you could show your support with a like. Your encouragement means the world to storytellers like me. The morning had started like any other for Luna. Her mother, Sophia, had been rushing around their small apartment in Queens, trying to get ready for her weekend shift at the diner, while simultaneously packing Luna's lunch and making sure her daughter had everything she needed for another day of street performing. Money had been tight since Sophia's husband had deployed overseas with the army, and every dollar Luna earned with her music helped buy groceries or keep the lights on. Their apartment was modest, a one-bedroom space with faded wallpaper and windows that rattled when the subway passed underground. But it was filled with love and music. Luna's father, Sergeant Miguel Martinez, had left behind his acoustic guitar when he deployed, and though Luna was still too small to play it properly, she would sometimes sit on her mother's bed and strum the strings, imagining conversations with her father through the vibrations that filled the room. "Mija, remember what I told you," Sophia had said that morning, kneeling down to adjust Luna's cap. Her uniform smelled like coffee and pancakes from the all-night shift she'd just finished. "Play from your heart, be polite to everyone, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you pack up and come straight home, okay?" Luna had nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of responsibility her mother was placing on her young shoulders. At 8 years old, she was already more mature than many of her classmates, forced to grow up quickly by circumstances beyond her control. She knew that her mother worked double shifts whenever possible, that the bills came faster than the paychecks, and that her father's military pay, while steady, wasn't enough to cover everything they needed in New York City. But when she held her guitar, age didn't matter, experience didn't matter. All that mattered was the music flowing through her fingers and the connection it created with anyone willing to listen. Luna had discovered early that music was a universal language. It didn't matter if someone spoke English, Spanish, Mandarin, or Arabic. When she played, people understood. The subway ride into Manhattan had been uneventful, though Luna had practiced fingering patterns on her lap, imagining the chords she would play. She'd memorized the route to Washington Square Park, knowing exactly which car to board and which exit to take. The park had become her stage, her sanctuary, and her classroom all rolled into one. Now, as she stood in the park with the sun warming her back and her guitar singing its plastic song, Luna felt the familiar magic beginning to work. A businessman in an expensive suit dropped a $5 bill into her open guitar case without breaking stride. A group of teenagers cheered when she nailed a particularly difficult chord progression. A young mother with a stroller clapped enthusiastically, and her toddler giggled and danced to the rhythm. But it was the older man, standing at the edge of the crowd, who caught Luna's attention. He wore dark sunglasses, despite the overcast sky that had begun to break into patches of sunlight, a black leather jacket that had clearly seen better decades, and his long graying hair was pulled back in a ponytail. There was something about the way he listened, completely still, completely focused, that made Luna play with even more passion. She could feel his attention like a spotlight, warm and encouraging. The man appeared to be in his 70s, but there was an ageless energy about him, as if rock and roll had preserved something eternally youthful in his spirit. His hands, Luna noticed, bore the calluses and scars of someone who had spent a lifetime making music. Though she couldn't have articulated it at her age, she sensed that she was in the presence of someone who understood music on a level that transcended casual appreciation. When she finished Iron Man, the crowd erupted in applause. Bills and coins clinked into her case, and several people called out requests. A college student shouted for Stairway to Heaven, while an older gentleman requested The Beatles. But the man in the leather jacket simply nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He looked familiar somehow, but Luna couldn't place where she might have seen him before. "That was bloody brilliant, love," he said, his voice carrying a distinctive Birmingham accent that Luna couldn't identify, but found oddly comforting. "How long have you been playing?" "About a year," Luna replied, suddenly shy. Up close, the man seemed even more familiar, and there was something almost mythical about him, like he'd stepped out of one of the rock magazines her father used to read before his deployment. "A year," the man whistled low, genuine amazement in his voice. "That's impressive. You've got real talent, little one. Real passion. That's rarer than you might think, even among professional musicians." Luna beamed at the praise, her chest swelling with pride. "My dad taught me a few chords before he went away. He said music was the best way to keep people close, even when they're far apart. He plays guitar too, a real one, not a toy like mine." Something shifted in the man's expression, a softness replacing the rock star mystique. His own father had been absent during much of his childhood, and he recognized the particular kind of maturity that comes from missing someone important. "Your dad sounds like a wise man. Is he away for long?" "He's in Afghanistan," Luna said matter-of-factly, though her voice carried the slight tremor that always accompanied mentions of her father's deployment. "Mum says he's helping keep people safe. He sends me videos sometimes, and I play for him on video calls when the internet works. Sometimes the connection is really bad and the picture gets all frozen, but he can still hear the music." The man was quiet for a moment, and Luna wondered if she'd said something wrong. Adults sometimes got that look when she mentioned her father's deployment, a mixture of sympathy and discomfort that made her feel like she needed to change the subject or somehow make them feel better about her situation. "You know," the man said finally, his voice gentler now, "I've been playing music for a very long time, longer than you've been alive actually, and I can tell you that your father is absolutely right. Music is magic. It connects souls across any distance, any barrier. When I was young, music saved my life more than once." He paused, studying her toy guitar with surprising seriousness, as if he were evaluating a vintage Stradivarius rather than a plastic instrument from a toy store. "Would you mind if I listened to another song? I'd like to hear what else you've learned." Luna's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Really? What would you like to hear? I know Crazy Train and Paranoid, and I've been working on Sweet Child O' Mine, but that one's really hard." The man's eyebrows shot up in surprise and delight. "You know Crazy Train? And Paranoid? Those are some excellent choices for a young musician. Very challenging. Why don't you surprise me with whichever one you feel most confident about?" Luna launched into Crazy Train, her small fingers flying across the strings with determination and surprising accuracy. She'd spent hours practicing this song, watching YouTube tutorials and slowing down the recordings to catch every nuance. Her toy guitar, despite its limitations, managed to capture the essential spirit of the piece, the driving rhythm, the memorable riff, the sense of controlled chaos that made the song so compelling. The man watched intently, occasionally nodding in approval when she nailed a particularly tricky passage. About halfway through the song, something extraordinary happened. The man began to hum along, and his humming gradually transformed into singing. His voice was powerful, gravelly, and unmistakably professional, a voice that had filled stadiums and defined generations. Other members of the crowd began to recognize what was happening. Phones appeared in greater numbers. People started whispering urgently to their companions, and the energy in the park shifted from casual street performance appreciation to something approaching religious awe. But Luna, focused entirely on her playing, didn't notice the growing excitement around her. She was lost in the music, in the incredible feeling of playing alongside someone who truly understood the art form. It was like finding a missing piece of herself. For months, she'd been playing alone, imagining how her songs might sound with a full band, with a real singer, with someone who could match her passion note for note. Now, miraculously, that dream was becoming reality. When they finished Crazy Train together, the applause was thunderous. People were cheering, crying, and frantically trying to capture every moment on their phones. Luna looked around in wonder, amazed at the size of the crowd they'd drawn. "That was amazing!" Luna exclaimed, her cheeks flushed with excitement and exertion. "You have a really good voice. Are you a singer? Do you play guitar too?" The man chuckled, a warm, gravelly sound that seemed to resonate with decades of laughter and music. "You could say that, love. I've been known to make a bit of noise now and then." He gestured to someone in the crowd, and Luna was amazed to see a roadie-type figure emerge with a battered acoustic guitar case. "Listen, would it be all right if I played something with you? I mean, really played, not just sang along. You have a guitar with you?" Luna's eyes widened with excitement and disbelief. What were the odds that another musician would just happen to be walking through the park with an instrument? "This old thing has been with me for decades," the man said as he accepted the case from his companion. "Maybe it's time it met a proper musician like yourself." As the man opened the case and lifted out a beautiful, well-worn acoustic guitar, Luna heard audible gasps from the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" and another voice said, "Is that really him?" But Luna was focused entirely on the instrument in the man's hands. It was the most beautiful guitar she'd ever seen, scarred and weathered but radiating history and music. She could practically feel the songs that had been played on it, the stages it had graced, the emotions it had channeled. The guitar was a vintage acoustic, its wood burnished to a warm honey color by decades of use. There were small dings and scratches across its surface, battle scars from countless performances. The tuning pegs were worn smooth, and the neck showed the telltale signs of a lifetime of chord changes and solos. It was an instrument that had been loved, played, and lived with. "What's your name, little one?" the man asked as he tuned his guitar with practiced ease, his fingers finding the tuning pegs by memory and making minute adjustments with the confidence of someone who had performed this ritual thousands of times. "Luna Martinez. What's yours?" The man paused, an amused smile crossing his weathered features. Ozzy Osbourne." The name meant nothing to Luna, but the crowd's reaction was immediate and explosive. Phones were thrust higher into the air, people pushed forward to get better views, and the whispered excitement became audible chatter that rippled through the gathered audience like electricity. Luna looked around in confusion, sensing something significant had just happened, but not understanding what. "Are you famous?" she asked, with the direct honesty only children possess, tilting her head slightly as she studied his face for clues. Ozzy laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that seemed to surprise even him. In decades of performing, he'd grown accustomed to immediate recognition, to the screaming crowds and the celebrity treatment. Luna's innocent question reminded him of a simpler time, when music was about connection rather than fame. "Some people seem to think so, love," he replied with characteristic humility. "But right now, I'm just a bloke who wants to play music with a talented young lady. What do you say we give these nice people a proper show?" Luna nodded eagerly, not fully understanding the magnitude of what was happening, but thrilled by the opportunity to make music with someone who clearly knew what they were doing. The guitar in his hands seemed to glow with possibility, and she could already imagine how their instruments might sound together. She positioned her toy guitar and looked to Ozzy expectantly, her small frame vibrating with excitement and nervous energy. Around them, the crowd had swelled to nearly 200 people, with more arriving every moment as word spread through the park and across social media. "Let's do Iron Man again," Ozzy suggested, his fingers already finding the familiar chord positions. "But this time, we'll do it properly. You play your part exactly like you did before, don't change a thing, and I'll fill in around you. Think you can handle that?" "I can handle it," Luna said, with the confidence that had carried her through months of street performing and the challenges of growing up too fast. What happened next was nothing short of magical. As Luna began the familiar opening riff on her toy guitar, Ozzy joined in on his acoustic, the two instruments creating a sound that was both intimate and powerful. The combination shouldn't have worked. A toy guitar and a vintage acoustic, a child, and a legend, plastic and wood. But somehow it created something entirely new and beautiful. Ozzy's playing was masterful, layering complex harmonies and counter melodies around Luna's simpler but heartfelt performance. He didn't overshadow her. Instead, he created a musical foundation that made her playing sound even better. When they reached the vocals, Ozzy's legendary voice soared over the park, and Luna found herself singing harmony, something she'd never done before, but that felt as natural as breathing. The crowd had swelled to over 300 people now, with park security beginning to take notice and news crews being alerted across the city. But for Luna and Ozzy, the audience had disappeared. They were lost in the music, in the pure joy of creating something beautiful together. Luna's toy guitar, which had seemed so small and inadequate moments before, now felt like the perfect instrument for this moment. Its bright, distinctive sound cut through Ozzy's deeper acoustic tones, creating a unique blend that was somehow both professional and wonderfully raw. When they finished Iron Man, the crowd erupted in a roar that could probably be heard blocks away. But before the applause could die down, Ozzy was already starting the next song, his fingers moving into the opening chords of Crazy Train. This time, Luna was ready for the collaboration, and she jumped in immediately, her confidence soaring with each passing measure. Shot in the Dark followed, with Luna gamely attempting to follow along on a song she'd never heard before. Ozzy would play a few bars, let her catch the rhythm and chord progression, then build the arrangement around her contributions. It was like watching a masterclass in musical mentorship, with Ozzy intuitively understanding how to challenge Luna without overwhelming her. "You're a natural, love," Ozzy said during a brief pause between songs, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Absolutely brilliant. You've got the most important thing a musician can have. You're not afraid. Fear kills more musical dreams than lack of talent ever could. I've seen technically perfect players who couldn't move an audience because they were too scared to let their souls show." Luna beamed at the praise, but her attention was caught by something else. In the crowd, she spotted a familiar figure. Her mother, still in her diner uniform, with her hair pulled back in the practical ponytail she wore for work, standing at the back of the gathering with tears streaming down her face. Sophia was recording everything on her phone, and Luna could see the pride and amazement in her mother's expression. Sophia had received a call from a neighbor who had seen the performance on social media, and she'd immediately left work and caught the first train into Manhattan. She'd arrived just as Ozzy and Luna were finishing Iron Man, and she'd been standing there ever since, watching her daughter live a dream she hadn't even known she had. "My mum's here!" Luna exclaimed, waving enthusiastically with her free hand while maintaining her grip on her guitar. Sophia waved back, mouthing, "I love you," across the crowd, her eyes shining with tears of joy and pride. Ozzy followed Luna's gaze and spotted Sophia immediately. There was no mistaking the family resemblance, and the expression on the woman's face was unmistakably that of a mother watching her child achieve something extraordinary. He gave her a respectful nod, which she returned with a gracious smile and a small wave. "She must be very proud," he said to Luna, his own voice slightly thick with emotion. "Not many kids your age would have the courage to do what you're doing. Standing up here, playing for strangers, putting yourself out there, that takes real guts." "She works really hard," Luna replied, her voice carrying a maturity that spoke to her awareness of her family's situation. "2 jobs, sometimes 3 when she can get the hours. I just want to help however I can. Daddy always said we're a team, even when he's far away." Something in Luna's matter-of-fact statement seemed to touch Ozzy deeply. He had his own complicated history with family, with fathers and distance, and the ways that music could both heal and hurt relationships. Seeing this little girl's determination to contribute to her family's well-being through her art reminded him of his own early days, when music had been both escape and survival. "You know what?" he said, his voice carrying a new weight of emotion. "I think we should play one more song, but this one's special. It's for your mum and for your dad, wherever he is. It's a song I wrote a long time ago about coming home, about family, about the people who matter most. Can you handle Mama, I'm Coming Home?" Luna shook her head, suddenly feeling the limits of her repertoire. "I don't know that one. I'm sorry." "That's all right, love. Don't be sorry. No one knows every song. Just follow my lead, play whatever feels right, and trust your instincts. Music isn't about knowing every song. It's about feeling the music and responding to it. Can you do that for me?" Luna nodded, gripping her pink guitar with renewed determination. She'd been improvising and adapting songs for months now, learning to trust her musical instincts when the YouTube tutorials weren't enough. As Ozzy began the gentle opening of one of his most beloved ballads, Luna listened intently, her musical ear already well developed despite her young age, picking up the chord progressions and emotional undertones. The song was slower than the others they'd played, more contemplative, and it carried a weight of longing that she could feel even without understanding all the words. When she finally joined in, her toy guitar added a surprisingly sweet counter-melody to Ozzy's lead. She didn't try to mimic his playing exactly. Instead, she found spaces in the music where her instrument could add its own voice, its own perspective. The result was like a conversation between generations, between different kinds of guitars, between different life experiences united by the common language of music. And when Ozzy began to sing, really sing, with all the emotion and power that had made him a legend, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. His voice, weathered by decades of performing but still capable of incredible beauty, carried the weight of every separation, every longing for home, every promise of return. The song was a message of love, of coming home, of the bonds that hold families together across any distance. As Ozzy sang about missing someone, about the ache of separation and the promise of reunion, Luna thought about her father. She thought about video calls that cut out mid-conversation, about care packages sent to the other side of the world, about a little girl trying to help her mother keep their family afloat through music and determination. But she also thought about the moment they were living right now, this incredible, impossible collaboration with a musician who had taken the time to see her, really see her, and treat her like a fellow artist, rather than just a cute kid with a toy guitar. She thought about her mother standing in the crowd, proud and amazed. She thought about how music had brought them all together in this perfect, unrepeatable moment. When the song ended, the silence stretched for several heartbeats before the applause began. But this wasn't the excited cheering from before. This was something deeper, more reverent. People were crying openly, hugging strangers, feeling the weight of the moment they'd just witnessed. Several people in the crowd were clearly veterans or military family members, and the song's message of homecoming had struck them with particular force. Luna's guitar case was overflowing now, not just with money, but with business cards, phone numbers, and scraps of paper with encouraging messages. A local news reporter was pushing through the crowd, camera crew in tow. Several people who identified themselves as music teachers were offering free lessons. A representative from a children's talent agency was trying to get Sophia's attention. Record company executives were making phone calls, and talent scouts were already discussing contracts and possibilities. But for Luna, all of that noise faded into the background. The most important moment came when Ozzy set down his guitar and knelt down to her level, speaking quietly, just for her ears. "Luna Martinez," he said, his voice serious and intense. "I want you to remember something very important. I've been playing music for over 50 years. I've performed for millions of people, recorded dozens of albums, and worked with some of the greatest musicians who ever lived. And I can tell you, without any doubt, that what just happened here was real magic." He paused, making sure she was listening, making sure she understood the weight of what he was saying. Music isn't about having the fanciest equipment, or the most expensive lessons, or the biggest stage. It's about having something to say, and the courage to say it. You've got both of those things in spades. Don't let anyone tell you that your guitar isn't good enough, or that you're too young, or that your dreams are too big. The world needs more musicians like you. Musicians who play from the heart, who aren't afraid to be vulnerable, who remember that music is about connection. He reached into his leather jacket and pulled out a business card, worn around the edges, but still elegant. "This has my manager's number on it. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, don't let anyone push you, give him a call. We'll make sure you get the support you need to take your music wherever you want it to go. Lessons, instruments, opportunities, whatever you need." Luna took the card with reverent care, as if it were made of gold rather than cardboard. "Thank you, Mr. Ozzy. This was the best day of my whole life." "Mine too, love," Ozzy replied, and meant it completely. "Mine too. You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. That's a gift I can never repay." As the crowd began to disperse and Ozzy prepared to leave, Sophia finally made her way through the throng to reach her daughter. She approached Ozzy with obvious gratitude and a bit of starstruck awe, but also with the dignity of a woman who had faced harder challenges than meeting celebrities. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion and exhaustion from her shift, but also vibrating with pride. "You have no idea what this means to our family. Luna has been so worried about helping out, and she loves music so much. But we could never afford real lessons or a real guitar." "No need to thank me," Ozzy interrupted gently, his own voice touched with emotion. "Your daughter is extraordinary. She reminded me why I started playing music in the first place, not for fame or money or recognition, but for the pure joy of making something beautiful and sharing it with others. If anything, I should be thanking her and thanking you for raising such an amazing young woman." He turned to Luna one last time, his weathered hand gently touching the brim of her father's old baseball cap. "Keep playing, little one. Keep believing in yourself. Keep being brave. The world is waiting to hear what you have to say, and I have a feeling it's going to be something special." As Ozzy disappeared into the crowd, somehow managing to slip away despite the chaos surrounding them, Luna looked down at her pink toy guitar with completely new eyes. It wasn't just a toy anymore. It was her voice, her connection to something larger than herself, her way of touching hearts and changing lives. It was the instrument that had brought Ozzy Osbourne to his knees to listen to her play, the tool that had turned an ordinary Saturday into something magical. That evening, as Luna and Sophia sat in their small apartment, counting the day's earnings, more money than Luna had ever made in a single day, enough to pay the electric bill and buy groceries for 2 weeks, the video of her performance with Ozzy was already spreading across social media at an unprecedented rate. Within hours, it would have millions of views. Record labels would call. Talk show hosts would extend invitations. Musicians from around the world would reach out with offers of collaboration. Opportunities would present themselves that Luna couldn't even imagine. The business card in her pocket would open doors to a future she had never dared to dream of. But for now, she was just a little girl with a toy guitar, practicing "Mama, I'm coming home," and thinking about her father on the other side of the world. Tomorrow, she would call him on video chat and play the new song she'd learned. She would tell him about meeting a famous musician who treated her like a real artist, who saw something in her that even she didn't fully understand yet. She would let him know that she and Mum were okay, that they were making music and making magic, and keeping the family together with love and determination, and the belief that music could bridge any distance. And in a tent in Afghanistan, Sergeant Miguel Martinez would watch his daughter play and weep with pride and amazement. He would see in her eyes the same fire that had driven him to join the military, the same determination to protect and provide for the people he loved. He would understand that his little girl was growing up to be someone extraordinary, someone who could take the lessons he'd taught her about courage and service and translate them into art that moved the world. The magic of that afternoon in Washington Square Park would ripple outward in ways Luna couldn't yet understand, touching lives and inspiring dreams across the globe. But she had learned something important about the power of music, about the courage to share your gifts with the world, and about the unexpected mentors who sometimes appear exactly when you need them most. As she fell asleep that night, her pink guitar propped carefully in the corner of her room next to her father's full-sized acoustic, Luna Martinez was already dreaming of tomorrow's performance, of new songs to learn, of stages yet to be played, and of all the hearts yet to be touched by the music flowing through her small but mighty hands. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was Ozzy's business card on her nightstand, illuminated by the soft glow of the street lamp outside her window, a promise of possibilities, a door to dreams, and proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen to those brave enough to stand up and play their hearts out for the world to hear. Thank you for joining Luna on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please consider leaving a like to show your support. Stories like these remind us that magic can happen anywhere, and that sometimes the most powerful performances come from the most unexpected places. The connection between generations of musicians, the power of dreams, and the importance of believing in young artists continues to inspire us all. Music truly is the universal language that brings us together across all boundaries.